Let me be direct. On April 26, 2026, Mali experienced a coordinated assault across 6 major cities that almost succeeded in decapitating the state. This was not a spontaneous uprising. The precision, the use of military uniforms, the simultaneous strikes on strategic nodes in Bamako. This suggests planning, resources, and possibly external enablement that has now exposed a fault line running through West Africa that no amount of diplomatic language can conceal. For those watching the Sahel, this matters. For those tracking great power competition in Africa, this matters more. Because what happened in Mali in those hours didn't just threaten one nation's stability. It revealed that the regional realignment underway, the one anchored in Mali's aggressive pivot towards sovereignty and military partnership with Russia and other non-Western actors, has created enemies. And those enemies may now have capabilities and willingness to act that the broader region had not fully reckoned with. Let's establish what we know and, just as importantly, what remains contested. The attacks began in a coordinated fashion across Bamako and 5 other major urban centers. The choice of targets was deliberate: military installations, government infrastructure, communication nodes. The attackers moved with tactical precision, wore military uniforms in some cases, and executed their movements as though they had studied the terrain and security patterns beforehand. This was not the chaotic raiding pattern typical of local insurgent groups with limited resources. This looked like preparation. This looked like intelligence. Mali's government, however, did not collapse into the kind of immediate paralysis that characterized previous coups or near coups in West Africa. The leadership survived, and security forces responded with force and coordination that, while stretched, ultimately held the line. Civilians participated in resistance. The state did not fall, but the margin was clearly narrow, and the sophistication required to mount such an operation raised questions that became impossible to ignore. Who had the capability to do this? Who had the motive? Within hours of the assault being contained, fingers pointed toward Guinea-Bissau. The suspicion was not random. Over the preceding months, Guinea-Bissau had undertaken a military buildup that, by regional standards, was substantial and notably rapid. New equipment, expanded training, enhanced logistical networks. For a nation that had not been a major military actor or a vocal rival to Mali, this expansion seemed disproportionate, unless it was being oriented toward something specific. The timing was also difficult to ignore. Mali had been consolidating power, deepening its military and political partnerships with Russia, and positioning itself as the ideological and strategic anchor of the Alliance of Sahel States. Guinea-Bissau's leadership, meanwhile, maintained different alignments, different economic dependencies, and different views on what the future of West African security architecture should look like. The question became, was Guinea-Bissau directly involved in the April 26th assault? Or had its military infrastructure, newly developed logistical networks, or willingness to host external actors made it a staging ground for others? Here is where we must be precise. No definitive evidence of Guinea-Bissau's operational involvement has been publicly disclosed. No captured documents, no intercepted communications, no confessions have conclusively proved direct coordination. What exists instead is a chain of circumstantial indicators: the proximity, the timing, the capability build-up, the political friction, the logical opportunity. This is the kind of analysis that informs regional suspicion but does not constitute proof in a court of law. And it matters to understand that distinction because it tells us something about how West Africa's security environment is now functioning, on suspicion, inference, and the assumption that adversaries will act when the opportunity permits. Mali's response has been to treat the suspicion as sufficient for action. The Alliance of Sahel States, of which Mali is the driving force, has escalated rhetoric toward Guinea-Bissau. Diplomatic pressure has intensified. The incident has become, in effect, a political weapon, one that Mali's leadership has wielded to consolidate its position domestically and regionally by casting the assault not as a failure of its own security apparatus, but as evidence of external enemies arrayed against the nation's sovereignty and its new geopolitical orientation. This framing is strategic. And here is where we need to think carefully about what is actually happening versus what is being claimed. Mali, over the past several years, has moved decisively away from Western security partnerships. The withdrawal of French forces, the deepening engagement with Russian military advisors and private security contractors, the cultivation of relationships with countries outside the traditional Western orbit. These were not accidents. They were the deliberate choice of Mali's government to assert sovereignty and to hedge its security against what it perceived as neo-colonial pressure. That choice has costs. One of those costs is the loss of intelligence-sharing relationships with nations that had deep surveillance capabilities in the Sahel. Another is the creation of resentment among neighbors and international actors who saw Mali's pivot as destabilizing or as a threat to existing regional arrangements. Whether Guinea-Bissau was directly involved in the April 26th assault or whether it was simply convenient to suspect it, or whether the assault was mounted by other actors entirely and Guinea-Bissau became the available target for political blame. What matters geopolitically is that Mali's government has now used this incident to reinforce its core narrative. The nation is under siege by external enemies, primarily Western-aligned actors who fear Mali's independence, and its security depends on Russian support and regional alliance building with other Sahel states pursuing similar paths. This narrative has domestic resonance. It consolidates the government's control. It justifies accelerated military expenditure. It explains away security failures. And it points the population's attention outward rather than toward questions about the regime's own competence. But narratives, however useful, do not exist in isolation from reality. The April 26th assault did happen. It was sophisticated. It was nearly successful. And it revealed that Mali, despite its pivot to Russia and its investment in new security arrangements, remains vulnerable to coordinated attack. More troublingly, it revealed that the region now contains actors with either the capability or the motivation, or both, to attempt state destabilization operations. That is a significant escalation from previous patterns. Look at what this suggests about regional power dynamics. Mali, supported by Russia and nominally allied with Burkina Faso and Niger through the Alliance of Sahel States, now views itself as a central power in West African geopolitics. It has positioned itself as the leader of a new security order, one that explicitly rejects Western mediation and embraces alternative partnerships. But the April 26th assault demonstrates that this new order does not command universal acceptance. There are states, Guinea-Bissau may be one, others in the region may be others, that view Mali's trajectory with alarm. They see a heavily militarized state under Russian influence, pursuing expansionist ambitions in the Sahel, and they are taking countermeasures, whether overtly or through plausible deniability. Is this coordination among Guinea-Bissau and other regional actors specifically designed to overthrow Mali's government? Or is it more diffuse, a collection of smaller states and external actors probing Mali's vulnerabilities, testing whether the new security arrangements Mali has embraced are actually functional? The honest answer is that we do not know yet. But the intent to test, to pressure, to destabilize, that much the April 26th assault makes clear. One of the unspoken elements of this crisis is the role of external powers beyond the immediate region. The United States and European nations have interests in West African stability, though their influence has diminished as Russia has advanced its position. France, in particular, has watched the Sahel with concern as its long-held security partnerships have evaporated. These external powers have not directly intervened in Mali's affairs following April 26th, at least not visibly. But they have certainly watched and calculated. Is Mali's government strong enough to consolidate control? Will Russian support prove sufficient? Will regional rivals sense weakness and press their advantage? These are the questions being asked in Washington, Paris, and Brussels. The April 26th assault also revealed something about the civilian population's attachment to the state. Citizens participated in repelling attackers. This suggests that despite years of instability and military rule, there is still some baseline social contract between Mali's government and its people, or at least enough shared interest in opposing a complete state collapse that people were willing to fight for it. This is not insignificant. Many African states, under stress, have not demonstrated this capacity. The fact that Mali's population responded defensively suggests that the government still retains legitimacy sufficient to mobilize when existence is threatened. Whether that legitimacy will extend to accepting the tighter security controls and accelerated militarization that will certainly follow remains to be seen. The incident has also crystallized something about the fragility of West African alliances. The Alliance of Sahel States is a real political and military arrangement, but it is held together primarily by shared opposition to Western intervention and shared belief in military solutions to security problems. Do these three states, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, actually trust each other? Do they have complementary interests beyond the negative one of opposing France and the broader Western order? The April 26th assault has exposed uncertainty on these questions. If one of them is vulnerable to sophisticated attack, are the others? If Guinea-Bissau or other regional actors can attempt to destabilize Mali, can they do the same to Burkina Faso or Niger? This is where the calculation changes. What appeared to be a coherent regional bloc may actually be three fragile states, each pursuing military-heavy governance models, each surrounded by enemies both internal and external, and each betting that Russian support will prove sufficient to overcome their vulnerabilities. It probably will not. Russia is a useful partner for disrupting Western influence and for providing technical military assistance. But Russia cannot provide the kind of comprehensive state-building, intelligence integration, or economic support that would address the root causes of instability in the Sahel. Russia is a disruptor, not a builder. And for states like Mali that are betting their survival on Russian partnership, this is a risk that has likely become more apparent since April 26th. The international dimension of the aftermath is also significant. The fact that no definitive proof of Guinea-Bissau's involvement has emerged, yet Mali has pressed accusations and the Alliance of Sahel States has echoed them, suggests that diplomacy in this region is increasingly conducted through accusation and counter-accusation rather than through shared fact-finding or mutual reassurance. This is a pattern familiar from other regions experiencing geopolitical turbulence. The degradation of trust networks until interstate relations are mediated primarily through suspicion and threat. What follows next may reveal the real intent. If Mali escalates significantly against Guinea-Bissau through military pressure, economic sanctions, or proxy operations, then we can infer that Mali's government has made a decision that the April 26 crisis created sufficient political permission to act on existing grievances. If Mali instead pivots to strengthening internal security and deepening its alliance architecture without major external escalation, then we can infer that the government views the crisis as a contained incident that has served its purpose in consolidating domestic control. The most likely trajectory, based on regional patterns, is somewhere in between. Mali will make symbolic gestures of retaliation or pressure toward Guinea-Bissau. It will use the incident to accelerate its military buildup and its security partnership with Russia and other allies. It will present itself as the victim of external aggression in order to consolidate domestic support and justify authoritarian measures. But it will likely stop short of outright military escalation that would invite direct confrontation with better resourced adversaries or trigger international diplomatic intervention. The tragedy of the April 26th assault is not only that it nearly succeeded in destabilizing Mali or that it demonstrated the state's vulnerability. The deeper tragedy is that it has reinforced the very patterns that make the Sahel so unstable in the first place. Military-dominated governance, external partnerships that substitute for genuine state capacity, the use of security crises as political tools, and the erosion of regional trust networks. Mali's response to the assault, even if tactically competent, will likely deepen these patterns rather than address them. The nation will become more militarized, more authoritarian in its security posture, more dependent on external partners, and less able to address the legitimate grievances and institutional weaknesses that allow insurgencies and conspiracies to flourish in the first place. For the broader West African region, the implications are sobering. If Mali, the anchor of the Alliance of Sahel States, the nation embracing Russian partnership most enthusiastically, can be brought to the brink of collapse by a coordinated assault, then the entire regional security architecture that has been constructed in recent years is more fragile than it appears. The states involved believe they are building something new and more sovereign. But what they may actually be building is a collection of militarized regimes, each vulnerable to internal and external pressure, each dependent on external patrons, and each increasingly distant from the international institutions and partnerships that, whatever their flaws, provide at least some framework for managing disputes and preventing uncontrolled escalation. The April 26th assault was a moment of crisis, but it was also a moment of clarity, one that revealed the depth of regional tensions, the brittleness of new alliances, and the persistence of old patterns, even as the rhetoric and alignments surrounding West African security have shifted dramatically. How Mali's government responds to this clarity, whether it deepens its existing trajectory or whether it uses this as an inflection point to rebuild trust and address underlying causes of instability, will determine not only Mali's future, but the trajectory of the entire Sahel region for years to come. For now, what is clear is that April 26th was not an ending. It was an opening to instability, to escalation, and to the fundamental uncertainty that characterizes a region whose security architecture is being remade in real time, with incomplete information, and with the full awareness that the stakes are survival itself. What we are witnessing in Mali is not an isolated security failure. It is a visible fracture in a regional order that is being remade in real time, with incomplete information, and with actors who are still learning the rules of engagement in a post-Western security architecture. The April 26th assault achieved something that its planners may not have fully anticipated. It did not topple Mali's government, but it did something arguably more consequential. It exposed the limits of Mali's new security model and revealed the depth of regional resentment toward Mali's pivot away from Western partnerships and toward Russian alignment. Consider what happened in the hours after the attacks were contained. Mali's government did not retreat into defensive postures or call for international mediation. Instead, it moved immediately to consolidate its narrative. The assault became evidence of external enemies. Guinea-Bissau became a target. The Alliance of Sahel States rhetoric intensified. In effect, Mali's leadership weaponized the crisis, using it to justify accelerated militarization, to suppress internal dissent, and to reinforce its claim that sovereignty demands complete independence from Western security frameworks. This is strategically coherent, but it carries risks that Mali's government may not fully have reckoned with. First, the militarization will deepen. Mali will spend more on defense, acquire more Russian equipment, expand its security apparatus, and concentrate more power in military hands. This may temporarily reduce the likelihood of another April 26-style assault, but it will not address the underlying causes: weak institutions, limited economic opportunity, grievances among excluded populations, and the reality that military solutions alone cannot solve security problems rooted in state capacity and legitimacy. Second, regional trust will continue to erode. Mali's accusations toward Guinea-Bissau, whether justified or not, will drive Guinea-Bissau further into defensive postures or into partnerships with Mali's rivals. The Alliance of Sahel States, meanwhile, will face mounting pressure as other regional actors view it not as a stabilizing force, but as a threat to balance of power. What Mali sees as necessary coalition building, neighbors will see as hegemonic ambition. Third, Russia's position will strengthen in the near term, but face constraints in the medium term. Russia benefits from Mali's dependence and from the instability that justifies expanded military partnerships. But Russia cannot provide the economic development, institutional reform, or genuine state-building capacity that Mali actually needs. Over time, Mali may find itself militarily stronger, but economically weaker, more dependent on external patrons, and less capable of addressing the legitimate grievances that fuel instability. Fourth, the Western powers, France, the United States, and Europe, will reassess their approach to the Sahel. The narrative that Mali is seeking genuine independence will be tested against the reality that Mali is simply trading one form of external dependence for another. This may lead to a period of strategic patience, waiting to see whether Mali's new trajectory proves sustainable. or it may lead to more active efforts to contain Mali's influence and support competing regional powers. The deepest implication, however, is this. April 26th demonstrated that the Sahel's security architecture remains fundamentally fragile. The states involved are vulnerable. The external partnerships upon which they depend are conditional. The regional rivalries are sharp, and the space for uncontrolled escalation, for miscalculation, for proxy conflicts, for state collapse, remains dangerously wide. Mali will survive April 26th. Its government will consolidate control. Its military will be reinforced. But the region will not return to stability. It will enter a new phase of competition, suspicion, and militarization. Whether this phase leads toward managed coexistence or toward broader conflict depends on decisions that are being made right now. In Bamako, in Ouagadougou, in Niamey, in Bissau, and in Moscow, Paris, and Washington. The stakes are survival itself.